How do we know that the Quran really came from God and not Muhammad? By fulfilled prophecies. That's one of the ways. So if you read the Quran, chapter 30, verse 1 through 4, it says, Aleph Lam Mim. The Romans have been defeated in a nearby land. Yet following their defeat, they will triumph within 3 to 9 years, and the whole matter rests with Allah before and after victory. And on that day, the believers will rejoice. So really, there's two prophecies here. The first prophecy is that the Romans, even though they were defeated, they'll triumph, they'll win, they'll be victorious within 3 to 9 years. The other prophecy is the last sentence, where it says, and on that day, the believers will rejoice. So the Muslims will gain victory, and the Romans will gain victory, according to the Quran, chapter 30. Quran chapter 30, verses 1 to 4. So what we see here is that the Muslims did indeed gain victory over the disbelievers in the Battle of Badr. If you read the history books, you read Ibn Hisham, the history of Al-Tabari, etc., you can read the details on how the Muslims won in the Battle of Badr against a much bigger opposition, much bigger Meccan opposition. But anyways, that's not the point of this video. According to secular sources, not Muslim sources, but secular sources, this prophecy did come true. Now all we got to do to prove that is just look up the Battle of Isis. So if you look up the Battle of Isis, it says, or the Heraclius campaign of 622, it says that Heraclius campaign of 682, erroneously also known as the Battle of Isis, was a major campaign in the Byzantine and Sassanian War of 602 and 628 by Emperor Heraclius, where the Byzantine were victorious in Anatolia. Anatolia is modern-day Turkey. So, if you read, if you want to read the secular sources on the Romans beating the Persians within 3 to 9 years as the Quran's time frame for that victory, you can look it up here, and if you read the references. The references are right there. These are secular sources. These are not Muslim sources or Christian sources. They are secular sources. So the prophecy did come true. The Quran's prophecy did come true within 7 years, because the Quran was revealed. That Quranic verse was revealed in 615. This victory was complete in 622. So 622 minus 615 is 7 years. So the prophecy did come true within 3 to 7 years, or within 7 years, which is the time frame of the prophecy according to 3, because the Quran says in a few years, meaning within 3 to 9 years. Now, what does Sam Shamouns say? Sam Shamouns. Now, this is a clear example that Shamouns does not know how to do logic and reasoning. He doesn't know historical context, and he doesn't understand, even common sense in logic and reasoning. He says, this is from his rebuttals to Shabir Ali. I'm not going to post the whole rebuttal, because the whole rebuttal is obnoxious and rude and offensive, but I'm just going to focus on this point, because that's not the point of this video, is to refute what Shamouns says. Shamouns says that this alleged prophecy is wrought with problems and is a great example of how incoherent, incomplete, and unintelligible the Quran really is. Well, I guess Shamouns hasn't read his Bible, because the Bible is filled with incomplete and incoherent and unintelligible stuff. So Shamouns really needs to read his Bible. But regardless, he says, first of all, who exactly defeated the Romans? Well, it's obvious, the Persians. I mean, just look at the historical context of this verse. It's talking about the Persians. It's talking about the Romans and the Persians. When were they defeated? Why does the Quran have to get into those details? That's not the point. The Quran's not giving like a historical lesson here. So the Quran doesn't need to dwell into that. Where were they defeated? Why does that matter? The Quran is basically saying that within a few years, the Roman Empire will be victorious. Why does it have to go into specific details? Doesn't make any sense. The Quran fails to answer any of these questions. Yeah, because these questions are irrelevant. The Quran is basically saying the Romans are going to be victorious within a few years. That's the point of the prophecy. The prophecy doesn't have to go into specific details. Then he says further, why does Allah have to guess that the precise time at the Roman victory would transpire? But Shamoun answers his own point, because he says, least Shabir misrepresent our point here. We want to clarify that we are not stating that God must give a time frame for fulfillment of a specific prophecy. Exactly. If you read the Bible says all kinds of things and doesn't give a time frame. The Bible says, or the New Testament says, Jesus will return in the lifetime of his disciples. Gospel of Matthew, in Paul's letters, etc. So if you read the New Testament, Gospel of Matthew, Luke, Paul's letters, it says Jesus will come back during the lifetime of the disciples. This never happened. So the New Testament gives, flat out wrong prophecies and gives the wrong time frame for the prophecy. So Shamoun is just being inconsistent here, or he's asking irrelevant questions. Then he says, we don't expect an all-knowing deity to guess that it would take place within a few years. Well, the Quran does not need to go into details. Why does the Quran need to give a specific time frame? Shamoun just answers his own point here. He says, Li Shabir represent our point here. We must clarify that we are not stating that God must give a time frame for the fulfillment of a specific prophecy. Exactly. So why does that matter? Why can't the Quran just say within a few years? That's not vague. The Quran is actually giving a specific time frame for the prophecy. Regardless, the prophecy did come true. And then he says, finally, according to the sources outside the Quran, this alleged prophecy is dated to 615 and refers to the defeat of the Romans at the hands of the Persians. Some Muslims are of the opinion the Arabic expression of a few years signifies a period between 3 to 9 years. That's true, because if you read Tafsir Ibn Kathir on this verse, Ibn Kathir cites the time frame of being 3 to 9 years. So what Shamoun's saying is true, implying that the Roman victory would occur anywhere between 618 and 624. So like I just said in that article, Heraclius' campaign of 622, that prophecy was fulfilled 7 years after that Quranic verse was revealed. Yet, according to secular sources, the Romans didn't completely defeat the Persians until the month of December in the year 627, roughly 12 years later. So, this is just false. Shamoun is just wrong. He's just dead wrong, because like I said, according to secular sources, I'll go back to that source right now. Let me go back to that. Let me go back to that source right now. It says Heraclius' campaign of 622. According to secular sources, the Romans were victorious over the Persians 7 years after that Quranic verse was revealed. So the time frame, or the fulfillment of that prophecy, fits the time frame given in the Quran. According to secular sources. And again, the secular sources are right here. You can look it up yourself. Heraclius, Emperor Byzantine, 2003, etc., etc. So, according to secular sources, this prophecy came true. So, even if, these are secular sources that have no axe to grind, no theological axe to grind, no Christian axe to grind, or Muslim axe to grind, so to speak. So, even secular sources disagree with Shamoun's point that, this prophecy came, or the time frame of the prophecy is off. Because what does Shamoun say? He says, yet according to secular sources, the Romans didn't completely defeat the Persians until the month of December in 627, roughly 12 years later. That is absolutely false, given secular sources. Heraclius' campaign of 622, a campaign 7 years after that Quranic verse was revealed. proves that that prophecy came true. So the Quran chapter 30 verses 1 to 4 is not an error here. And further, what's more interesting is if we look up the Battle of Badr, which was the first major victory of the Muslims. Let's see here. Let me see here. So according to these sources, the Battle of Badr actually happened within 9 years. So the Battle of Badr, the Muslims won within that time frame of 3 to 9 years, because the Battle of Badr was in 624 CE. So even after the Heraclius campaign of 622, even after that, there was still the Romans were still beating the Persians. So the victory was permanent after the victory was permanent, after 622. So even after that time frame, the Romans were still beating the Persians. Let's see here. I'm trying to get, 623, the Romans were still beating the Persians. On March 25th, 624, Heraclius left Constantinople to attack the Persian heartland. He willingly abandoned any attempt to secure his rear in his communications with the sea. Heraclius led a campaign, 40,000, defiance of earlier. I'm trying to get to the victory. Okay, so basically, the same year as the Battle of Badr, hang on, let's see here. On March 25th, 64, left hands to attack the Persians. So, even in 624, the Romans beat the Persians on March 25th, 624, the same year as the Battle of Badr. So this fits within my point is, it fits within the time frame of 3 to 6 years, or 3 to 9 years, that the Quran gave the time frame for the prophecy. So regardless, Shamoun is just wrong on his interpretation of the Quran chapter 30. This is a fulfilled prophecy according to secular sources, and Shamoun just asked a bunch of irrelevant questions that have no bearing on whether the prophecy came true or not. So Shamoun is just dead wrong here. So this is just one of the proofs that the Quran, that Muhammad could not have authored the Quran, because he was making points he's making prophecies. He was predicting or making prophecies that could have came true or could have not came true, but the Quran was confirming that, or the prophecies of the Quran are being fulfilled. So that means that the author of the Quran could not have been Muhammad, since it had to be some kind of supernatural source, because with a prophecy, it either could come true or it could be false. In this case, it came true. Thus, the Quran is not an error. Is not an error when it talks about the Romans defeating the Persians within a specific time frame. This refutes Shamoun's points, and this proves that the prophecy of the Quran came true. Thus, we have good reasons to believe that the Quran really came from God, as the Bible says in Deuteronomy, 18, etc., that in order to test the prophet, test his prophecies, this prophecy of the Quran came true. Thus, we can be confident that Muhammad is a real prophet according to the standards of the Bible. Stay tuned, more videos coming up ahead.